6 and I work in an office. 9 till 5's not the best, I'll be honest. If I could change a single thing, I'd make it me and not him. He's in your bed, I'm in your Twitch chat. I've got the key and he's just a doormat. And even though he's got social skills, that doesn't mean I can't pay the bills. Anyway, make the most of him, 'cause she moves on pretty bloody quick. Oh, oh. Your new boyfriend's an asshole. Took you away from me, you hit it off instantly. I know, 'cause you won't stop telling me. I've seen his jawline, shoulders and muscles push against his fashion sense. I've thought about what he looks like nude. Not gay though. 'Cause she's living the dream. Oh, she's living the dream. From back when we were 17, she's living the dream. Oh, she's living the dream. From back when we were 17. How on earth could I be safe when I'm one click away from insane? I just think that I deserve a little bit of what I earned. I'm not gonna make another scene. The one I made when I was 23 means I'm not allowed in Disney World. He's in your bed and I'm in your Twitch chat. I've got the key and he's just a doormat. 'Cause even though he's got social skills, that doesn't mean I can't pay the bills. Anyway, make the most of him, 'cause she moves on pretty bloody quick. Oh, oh. Your new boyfriend's an asshole.
Hello, hello, hello. Just some technical stuff real quick. For one thing, it says my bitrate is still unstable, so I have a feeling it has something to do with playing music, I guess. I didn't update my OBS, and that also might be one of the issues with like bitrate these past couple streams. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to turn on the window capture, but I'm not gonna play the music. I'm just gonna leave it on this scene. Is there any way I can get rid of the instrumental violin background relaxing music? Shit, I don't think there is. So you're just gonna have to deal with that. Also, I've just decided fuck it on having my fan on, because it is just way too hot during the summer in my room. And I also have the window open, so let's just hope that no more post-Independence Day fireworks happens, you know? Um, okay, so the bitrate says it's excellent now, so hopefully there shouldn't be any issues. Also, but like, I don't like the idea that you could possibly hear my fan in the background. Hold on, let me... Oh yeah, you can definitely hear my... Oh dear. So, there's this like setting on my microphone that's like supposed to isolate background noise. If I press that button, is there any difference? I pressed the button. Did it do anything? Let me know. I wanna encoding overloaded. Consider turning down video settings. Okay, I'll turn down my mic. And also on my microphone. There we go. Maybe it won't be as bad now. And because there's no music, I don't have to worry about my voice being louder than the music or the music being louder than my voice. That is not what I wanted to do, excuse me. The fan isn't that loud. Okay, that's good to hear. I would normally have my ceiling fan on, but it hasn't properly functioned since 2019 because you remember that TikTok trend where people would grab their moving fans to make it stop? I did that one too many times and I broke one of the blades off. And I still haven't gotten a new ceiling fan, so I've just been dealing with either having to open the window or having this little fan on the end of my bed. Alright, but now that all the technical stuff is out of the way, hello! This is going to be part 2 of reading PASSERINE. Like I said in the previous stream, this is probably going to be a 3-parter because of how, how terrible quality the last stream was. I couldn't get through halfway. 2, because it's such a long chapter, and 3, I have not been very diligent with charging my phone today, and it's at 38%, and so I don't want my phone to die. Alrighty, so I'm gonna do a quick recap of the first part of this chapter. So, from what I remember, before we start the reading, can you do a summary of the last VOD? This fucking delay, man. Okay. So, Wilbur, as controlled by Dream, almost killed Technoblade, but they're fine. Everyone's fine. But then Dream was like, I'm gonna start the story all over, or something like that, and apparently he put them all into like some kind of weird dreamlike state where they like relive some of their best memories, or like, what's the word, fabricated versions of them. And so that's where we're at right now. I think right now we're with Phil in his little headspace kind of thing. Now I can't remember exactly where we left off, so I'm just going to start at the closest paragraph that I remember reading. Alright. He looked down at Tommy, watching his... Oh, by the way, this is, for anyone new that could be potentially watching, this is PASSERINE, an SBI fanfiction, written by Blue Jamas and Theseus on Wattpad. Not Wattpad, fuck. archive of our own. Alright. He looked down at Tommy, watching his son's expression as it shifted. Philza was sitting against the trunk of an apple tree, with Tommy's head resting across his lap and apple blossoms falling idly through the hazy air. Under any other circumstances, it would have been a perfect day. As it was, all Phil could see was phantom blood on his hands from the last time he'd held Tommy this close, and a growing sense of trepidation as each second ticked by. Another second where the green god was tearing the real world apart. Another second towards another story of rebirth and tragedy and unknowing. Another second without knowing where Techno and Wilbur were, whether they were safe, whether they were alive, whether they could still remember who they were and who he was, and what they still had to do. You aren't really you either, Philza said, less of a question and more of a lament that he was right. Hesitantly, he ran his fingers over Tommy's hair, and he felt his heart snap when Tommy did not pull away. You're someone I want you to be. I'm someone you need me to be, Tommy corrected. Does that make any less of this real? Does that mean I'm not really here, trying to make you wake up and go save my dumb brothers? Does that mean I'm really gone? Not even a ghost or a memory? He shrugged. Who knows? You're supposed to be the adult here. You tell me. Adults don't have all the answers, Tommy, Phil said, no matter how much I wish we did. Answer me this, then, said Tommy, reaching out to run a hand over the obsidian feathers of the wing Philza had been using to block the sunlight from his eyes. How the hell did you hide these? Hard to imagine I just didn't notice you walking around with two massive fucking wings jutting out of your back. I'm a god, Tommy, Philza said slowly. I can hide anything. Tommy's blue eyes slid to Phil's. Not everything. Without waiting for a reply, Tommy sat up and put both of his hands on Phil's shoulders, his expression deadly serious. I never knew this side of him, Phil thought, and I never will. Listen, Tommy said, as if Philza was not already hanging on to his every word, memorizing every syllable and intonation. I know you've already figured it out. You know why Dream is so afraid of you, and it's the same reason why you're the only person that can break out of here. If I can, Philza said. Why have I never done so before? We've been in this cycle for eons. You've come close, Tommy replied. So close, a few times. But either Dream always finished rewriting before you could, or... Tommy paused for just 1 second before continuing. More resolutely. Or you didn't want to leave. Philza opened his mouth to say he would never do that. He would never jeopardize an entire universe just to revel in some lie, no matter how beautiful it was. But then he realized he already did. Swallowing the bitter taste on his tongue, Phil asked, I want to stay, Tommy. Tommy blinked, his expression crumbling with anger and disappointment. And then clarity, as the first of Phil's tears began to drop, a warm and silent rainfall. He could never hide anything from Tommy. But you won't, Tommy finished, something like pride flickering in his eyes. But I won't, Philza confirmed, wrapping his hands around Tommy's wrists and holding on for dear life. I have to end it, Tommy. I can't put everyone through this again. I can't put Wilbur and Techno through this again. Tommy grinned, triumphant. That's my dad. My Tommy. And with that, Phil gently pulled Tommy's hands away from his shoulders and stood, brushing apple blossoms from his clothes. They fell to the grass, limp and already rotting despite their loveliness. Tommy got up, and for a moment they stood there together, just son and father, looking out over their orchard and remembering slow days when once they were four, with Tommy on Wilbur's shoulders and their mother painting and Philza tossing flowers into the air just to hear his family laughing. "They call you the Angel of Death," Tommy began, and Philza knew the end was near. "That's not all you are. What are you the god of, Philza?" The words were Tommy, but the voice was not. "Can you turn up your mic a bit?" "Sure." There we go. Oh, the voice wasn't. So let me rephrase that. "They call you the Angel of Death," Tommy began, and Philza knew the end was near. "But that's not all you are. What are you the god of, Philza?" The words were Tommy, but the voice was not. It was a whisper. Oh, god damn it. You know what? I'm just gonna keep reading. It was a whisper of 1,000 different Tommies from 1,000 different universes. It was the shout of those who had been Philza's sons and those who never were. It was the battle cry of soldiers and thieves, the exiled and the dead, the lost and returning. It was the demand of all the boys Philza had failed. "Are your wings not a reminder of what you are? You are PASSERINE and bird of prey both." Philza turned to look at Tommy, but he was not looking at Tommy. Or, more accurately, he was looking at all of Tommy, brief images of all the Tommies that had come before. Here, a tall man with a golden crown of laurels. Here, a young boy with a broken compass strung around his neck. Broken compass. Okay. Sorry, I just... Alright. They said the name of the title, they said it. True. DSMP Tommy, my beloved. Let's see, where was I? Here, a feathered creature with wide blue eyes. Here, a withered warrior with alliums tucked into the pockets of his ruined coat. Okay. Fuck. It had to be alliums. It had to be alliums. Are you... Alright. God of Death, they call you. Every Tommy said at once, and they are closer to the truth than they think. After all, is death not just a final act of liberation? Tell me you look out every open window and wish only to fly away. Tell me what the spider in his infinite authority fears above all. Tell me what you are. I'm the god of freedom, Philza said, and I'm flying the fuck out of here. Damn right you are, Tommy grinned, still flickering. Still all of him. So go. Philza spread his wings, aiming for the sky. He was the god of freedom, and he was flying the fuck out of there. But also, more than that, he was a father. So, despite the world waiting for him beyond the sapphire sky, he turned to look at his son one last time. His golden boy with the golden smile, and he hugged him. It was a simple thing, a quiet thing, that parents have been doing for their children since the very concept of parenthood was created. But still, to Phil, it felt like a revelation. Every version of Tommy hugged him back. I wish we could have more time, Philza whispered, his tears coming on more quickly, so warm they might burn right to the bone. I wish I could have watched you grow up. I wish I had loved you like you deserved. I wish I could have made it all up to you. I wish the universe's worth of wishes for you, my boy. I know. And this was just Tommy's voice. Tommy, singular. This Philza's Tommy. I better not see you, Will, or Techno again for a long, long time, he added, which Philza knew meant, I will love you. Without requisite or deadline, I will love you. Philza replied, we aren't in any hurry, which meant, we love you too. When Philza let go, Tommy was gone. He was alone, and the sky was awaiting far above him. Mother tilted her head towards a distant sound that Wilbur couldn't hear. We don't have much time, she said firmly, her hands fluttering like paint-stained moths set aflame. He's almost done, and then we'll have to do this all over again. But Wilbur was still reeling, his mind going through 1,000 thoughts per second and managing to understand none of them. We were fighting, always fighting, you lot, Mother said with a small smile, but her eyes were sad. Deep breaths now, Will. Tell me what you know. I was in a city in the north, Wilbur said, his mouth tasting of ash and melting snow. Outside a church with broken windows. Yes, you were. I don't play the violin. No, you don't. Wilbur glanced at his mother's painting, the one with soft colors and old lines, and Tommy will never live past 15. No, Mother replied, regret and sorrow, two of Wilbur's own restless shadows gleaming in her eyes. He won't. And you're dead too, Wilbur continued, free-falling into the abyss. Aren't you? Yes, I am. He ran his shaking hands through his hair, clutching a handful of the brown strands and almost tearing them away in his terror. It was a fear he knew well. It had never truly left him since the night he found her gone. He'd been too sick to attend her funeral afterwards, spending feverish days in and out of consciousness. When he'd finally been steady enough to pull himself out of bed, they'd already buried her, and he only saw her again in painted portraits that didn't quite capture the brightness of her smile, and in the middle of the night, when every hallway of the castle was haunted by her. I can't wait till we finish this. I want to write a fic about PASSERINE so bad. That sounds cool. But now she was here, standing before him, older than she had been when he lost her, and still younger than she deserved to be. She deserved decades. She deserved infinity. And Tommy did too. I want to stay here with you, Wilbur said, still a child. Always a lost child with her. Because I miss you. Because you were the one person that I had nothing to prove to. Because you can make things all right. You can fix the things that I broke, can't you? She looked at him. He knew her answer. You could stay, she said kindly. I won't fault you for it. He knew she meant it. So why did the pain in his chest only get worse? A soft breeze swirled into the tower. Wilbur inhaled the scent of fresh apples. It was so real. So real. But then he looked at the painting again, staring at the incomplete version of him. At his father, who had aged when he could not. At Tommy, older than he ever would be in truth. At his mother, who had given him her artist's hands. Will you forgive me? Wilbur asked, his voice rough and small. If I still want to live with you, without you. In reply, she pulled him down gently and placed a soft kiss on his forehead. I loved you before I even met you, she whispered against his skin, and I loved you even more after I did. I'm sorry for leaving too soon and leaving too much. She pulled back, her eyes shimmering and hands warm on both of Wilbur's cheeks. But look at you. Look how much you've grown. Look how far you still have to go. Come with me? He asked, pressing his face closer against her paint-streaked palm. You can lie. Lie and say you'll be coming with me. I'm always with you, Will, she said, smiling a wavering smile. I am in every note you play and every song you sing. I fight your every battle and feel your every pain. And I feel your joy and your compassion and your regret and your bravery. Whatever you do, Will, I am with you. And he swallowed roughly. And Tommy, you and your brother, she said, are bound by something stronger than fate and stronger than death. She dropped her hands and stepped back. The distance between them was a chasm. One is gone, but not forever. One is gone, but not the other. Wilbur took a rattling breath and squared his shoulders. He wasn't ready, but he had no other choice. He gave his mother one last lingering look. All the things he still wanted to say, he said it with it. All the I love yous, dressed to hallway ghosts, and all the I wish you were here screamed into the silence of his own head. He would never see her again. He would never see Tommy again. Those were the truths he would have to learn to live with. All that grief and love and hope and fear in one word. Goodbye, Wilbur said. He shut his eyes as he turned away, unwilling to look at what he would be leaving behind. His perfect mother and her perfect painting of what could have been. Hold on, I'm gonna drink some water. She might have said goodbye back, but the wind was whistling past Wilbur's ears as he took off running, drowning out everything else. When he opened his eyes again, the arched window was waiting before him, opening into the endless sky. He leapt, and his father caught him. Wilbur grinned up at the winged figure above him as they soared past the eddying clouds. Always have to make a last-minute entrance, don't you? Father looked down at him as he tightened his hold on Wilbur's hand, obsidian wings cutting through the air in persistent booming beats. Are you all right? Was the first thing he said. He sounded like he was choking on his own heartache. For once, Wilbur found he was just like his father. Wilbur closed his eyes against the rushing wind, letting it dry his lingering tears. No, he admitted, but I will be. Wilbur looked around at the open sky, seeing nothing but blue and white until the distant horizon. So, Father, how are we getting out of here? I still think Phil is gonna die. Oh yeah, that's right, you did say that. He probably will. Even in their separate sadness, Wilbur still noticed the small smile on his father's face. Do you trust me, Will? I just jumped out a tower for you. Father's laughter was a strained sound, but it was almost like music. What if I asked you to let go of my hand? Wilbur didn't think. He just let go. For a moment, he was weightless, suspended mid-air, as clean and pure as the clouds that were the sole witnesses of his slow descent. There was no life and no death, and no Wilbur, and no enemy waiting for him on the other side. No dead brothers, no lost brothers, no mothers in towers, no fathers newly regained. There was only the falling. "Will!" Father called out over the rushing wind. "Open your eyes!" Wilbur had not even realized he closed them. When he opened them again, all he could see was the welcoming blue, and his father falling right beside him, wings tucked in close. "I saw Mother," Wilbur said to the open air, his hands in his pockets as if it were a normal afternoon conversation. "I saw Tommy," Father replied. "He said to tell you not to die yet." Hold on a second. Just gonna check something real quick. Okay. Whew, alright. Wilbur smiled faintly. "Sounds like him." He balled his hands into fists where his father couldn't see them shaking. But was it really him? Really them? "I don't know." Father sighed as they hurtled into nothingness. "And does it really matter, Will?" "I suppose not," Wilbur said. "We had them back for a moment. That's all it was in the end." He spun in the air to face his father. In the short time since they'd faced off with Dream, his father's eyes had aged 1,000,000 years. More somberly, Wilbur said, "We have to get Techno back too. Where is he?" "Tucked away somewhere else, like I was? Like you were?" "How did you get to me then?" Velza grinned. "Like this." He unsheathed the sword at his hip and tore a hole right across the sky below them. "What the fuck?" Wilbur shouted as the tear in the very fabric of the universe spread before him. It was a pitch-black scar running across the blue, a jagged line of nothingness. Wilbur reached out to clutch his father's arm, his heart rioting inside his chest as it rejected what his eyes were definitely seeing. "What the hell is that?" "Our way out," Filza said, moving closer to Wilbur, his wings folding over the both of them like a comforting childhood blanket. "Falling is the easy part, Will. Now it's time for the crash." "Can you turn up your mic a bit more?" "Yeah. I just don't want the fan to be absolutely just, you know." They fell into the dark and were gone. "I should know you." The words fell in a pathetic rush from Techno's mouth. "I should, but I don't." The little girl who was his sister, had been his sister just a few seconds before, stared at him with wide eyes that were like twin pools of ancient water, reflecting his own strained face back at him. Her question echoed in his head, a chant and an accusation and a lament. "What's my name? What's my name? What's my name?" Techno wrenched his hand away from her and scrambled backwards, his breaths coming fast and harsh. She frowned after him, but did not move to follow. "You're my sister," he sobbed, clutching the hand that had held hers so gently, so familiarly. "But I don't even remember your name." Hers, and their siblings, and their fathers and mothers. Once knowledge as common as air, now slipping from his fingers. He stared at her, begging the universe to give him one syllable, one letter. He would take anything. He would take breadcrumbs. "I killed you," he whispered, falling into the dirt, a puppet with no master. He put his head in his shaking hands. "I killed all of you. No. No. The sternness in her voice made him look up. She still stood where she had been, a pillar of stone, her face pink with fury. That wasn't you. The spider got you. That's all. That's all? Techno shouted. The forest was pressing in on them. He knew it. The darkness would take him again, just as it took him all those years ago, the last time he'd been down this road. Yes, she replied. Yes, that is all. It was all him, never you. We understood that then. We understand that now. Nobody blamed you or will ever blame you for something you could not control. We're not that horrible or that stupid. But I hurt you, Techno whispered. I know I did. You must have been so scared. I wasn't, she said, but Techno knew it was a lie by the wobbling of her lower lip. You would never hurt me. I know that. I knew that. She stepped closer, slowly, as if she were approaching a wounded wolf. And it's important to me that you know that too. Something flickered in Techno's periphery, and they both turned to see the forest just up ahead. Beyond the darkness, there was a small clearing, blazing with sunlight. Surrounded by flower patches and shrubbery was a house, small and cozy, with a brick chimney letting out pale smoke. A window was open, and through it, Techno could see a table set for dinner, and children fighting over an apple pie. A tall, wiry man with his pink hair pulled back from his face was swatting at them with no real force, telling them to share, you greedy little monsters. A woman with braided hair stood to the side and threw her head back in a deep laugh. One of the kids leaned too far in the scuffle, fell face first into a bowl of mashed potatoes, and began wailing. An older child, almost as old as Techno, rolled her eyes warmly and promised to do anything he wanted if he would just stop crying. Techno saw all of them. None of them saw Techno. They're calling me back, the little girl said. But Techno couldn't take his eyes off the house and the family that lived in it. His house, once. His family. Warm and lovely and easy. I can't go home yet, Techno said, hating himself more and more with every word. I still have to save Wilbur and Philza. I still have to bury Tommy. And I still have to put that green bastard into the goddamn ground. Well, duh! When he turned to her again, she had her hands on her hips and a sad smile on her face. I said they were calling me back. No one said anything about you. Not everything's about you, you know. Despite everything, Techno managed a weak laugh. Of all the people to be my guide through this shit afterlife, why'd it have to be you? Because my spirit is too big for my own body, she replied haughtily. And I'm tired of some random man deciding my lives for me. He didn't even ask if I wanted to be a human being. What if I wanted to be a frog in the rain? Did he ever consider that? No. Instead, he made me small and stinky and boring. She wrinkled her nose in disgust. I want to be more than someone else's backstory. I want to be the hero. I'm going to be the hero next time. Just you watch. I already am, Techno said softly. In the distance, he could still hear the laughter of people he used to know by heart. But closer, somewhere just behind him, he heard a voice calling his name. Techno turned towards the voice. He would always turn towards that voice. There was only the forest off the path, broken branches and nothingness. And still, somehow, he knew he would be safe in it. He shakily rose to his feet, each small movement sending electricity through his veins. His old bones knew he should be going with her, going home, and starting the cycle anew. The wheel had to move forward. This was not how the real story ended. But screw the wheel. Screw what the storyline dictated. He was Technoblade, and he was going to write his own damn story. He stood his ground, felt the wheel push at his back, shoving him roughly forward. But if he was even half as stubborn as the little girl before him, then he had nothing to fear. The ground held beneath him. He passed a hand over his misty eyes. "I have to go," he said tiredly. "Wilbur's looking for me." She grinned. "So? Get going, you slow old man." "Not that old." "Whatever you say, Grandpa," she replied, taking one step towards the light, and then another. "Oh, before I forget, everyone wanted me to tell you something." He leaned towards her. "What is it?" She leaned towards him. "You look dumb with that hairstyle." "Wait, you look dumb with that hairstyle," she whispered gravely. "Please keep your hair out of your face because it's starting to function like curtains." "You little brat!" Techno moved to grab her, but she danced out of the way, laughing so hard she almost tripped over her own feet. She moved to go again, but stopped at the very end of the road, silhouetted against the sunlight. "You know, for what it's worth," she said, turning just enough for Techno to see a faint smile on her face, "I think the Green God made the right call this time around, making you my older brother. You were pretty great at it." "Before I murdered all of you," Techno said, his throat burning from a stoppered sob. "You can't ever just accept a compliment, can you?" "It wasn't that great of a compliment to begin with." "Fine, I take it back." "Don't you dare," Techno began, but she was already gone. Always have to have the last word, he thought fondly, glad to even have that small scrap of her to take with him into the dark. He folded the memory of her running home, 2 braids bouncing against her shoulder blades with each excited step, and tucked it behind his heart, where it would always be safe. She would stay there, right next to the little house with the laughing strangers, right next to Tommy. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the smell of pine trees and flowers and apple pies, and stepped off the path. He walked first, then ran, ducking under branches and shaking his feet out of the tangled undergrowth, tearing through the dim with only Wilbur's voice to guide him. "Techno! Will?" Closer now. Stray branches tugged at his clothes and his hair. With his sister's advice and from pure annoyance, Techno ripped a strip of cloth from his shirt sleeve and tied his hair back into a simple knot at the nape of his neck. It wasn't an elegant braid, but it would have to do. He continued running. "Wilbur!" he called again. "Techno!" Just to the right of him. "Techno! Over here! Techno!" Techno fell against a tree, taking in what was before him. A strange dark line stood out in the dim, blacker than black, cut straight from the darkest of the lowest caves of the earth. It felt lonely. Standing beside it, wings tucked in close, was Filza. And Wilbur. "Come on," Wilbur said, a half smile on his face. "You're late." Techno rushed to him and gave him a swift punch to the shoulder. Wilbur stumbled, almost falling back into whatever the black cut was before Techno caught him by the wrist and pulled him upright again. "How many times do I have to lose you in a single day?" Techno demanded, squeezing Wilbur's wrist just to make sure he was real. He was here. He wasn't part of this strange dreamscape. Wilbur rubbed sheepishly at his shoulder and said, "I didn't really have a say in it." Keep close to me from now on, Techno ordered, releasing Wilbur after he was sure the pulse at his wrist was there. And you... He turned to Philza, ready to unleash his pent-up emotions on the nearest god available. But the fraught words died on his lips when he took in his old friend. You look different. Philza shrugged one shoulder. It's been a long few hours. He saw Tommy, Wilbur added by way of explanation. Is he okay? Techno asked, stepping towards Philza. Philza shook his head. We can talk about it later, he said, sounding strangled. Techno understood. It would take him years to speak about what happened on that road. For now, it was his own burden to carry alone. Someday he'd share it, but not when the wound was too fresh, too hurting. All right, Techno said. That's okay. So how the hell are we getting out of here? He still had a score to settle and a prince to bury after all. Wilbur nodded wordlessly towards the pulsing black scar in the air. Oh, said Techno. You have got to be kidding me. It's safe, Wilbur said. Say that again without looking so green and I might believe you. It's a cut-through reality, Philza said, exasperatedly. Of course it would not be a very comfortable experience. Wilbur scoffed. It felt like having my innards rearranged by a very excitable toddler. He heaved a resigned sigh as he faced the cut. I guess I'll go first. He threw a look at the other two behind him. See you on the other side, then? I'll follow soon, said Techno. Don't get lost again. Wilbur gave him a mocking salute before falling into the void. It swallowed him whole. Techno watched him disappear with a sinking feeling in his gut. Before a heartbeat had even passed, he was already moving forwards, intending to follow behind Wilbur as he'd promised. He would not let him out of his sight again. But before Techno could step through, a hand closed around his arm and pulled him back. He turned towards Philza, a complaint already on his lips, before he noticed the somber look on the other god's face. He really did look different. He was quieter somehow, and yet brighter at the same time, like a young star silently basking in its newfound brilliance. Techno, Philza said, we need to talk. I need more water. There we go. Wilbur was being unmade. That was what it was. As he fell through the black, spiraling between what was real and what was imagined, drifting in the space between lie and truth, he felt himself being pulled apart and then pulled back together, born and then unborn and then reborn and unmade. Father had called it the crash, but that wasn't quite true. It was crashing and flying and crashing again. The euphoria of flight equaled by the pain of the collapse. It was agony. It was dawn. It was over. He hit the ground. Breathed in, breathed out. The air tasted bitter, like ash, like the dust on a guitar case sitting unopened for years. His ears were ringing, his vision blurring. There was nothing beyond the feel of cold snow under him, coarse and biting. His muddled mind could grasp no thought other than, I need a blanket. He spat snow and blood out of his mouth and struggled upright, managing to get on his knees before he fell back again. What fight there was left in his body fleeing as his vision finally cleared, and he realized he was watching the end of the world. The sky was red. The city was burning. Fissures arched across the ground like lightning, chasms leading straight to the underworld. As Wilbur looked on, the earth shook again, and more cracks spread, one breaking open just feet away from him. Shit, Wilbur thought, scrambling back, his heart in his throat. Shit, shit, shit. The only structure that remained relatively intact was the church, and standing at its bell tower, at the eye of the storm, was none other than Dream. He didn't seem to notice Wilbur's reappearance. How could he? In the same way the giants paid no heed to ants, the god had bigger affairs to tend to than a single mortal standing in the wreckage of the only universe he had ever known. Dream paced around the circumference of the bell, trailing a hand on its bronze surface, only pausing whenever another earthquake hit. It took Wilbur a few dizzy beats to realize he was causing it. With a tilt of his head and a flick of his fingers, the green god was slowly breaking the world apart, remaking it into another version, another stage. Wilbur barely registered the thud of another person falling beside him. What the... Wilbur turned to watch Techno blink groggily at the scene before them, waking from a dream and straight into a nightmare. He already looked so exhausted, pink hair tied loosely back from a face that had seen better days. He was so pale, the only color on his face the dark lines under his eyes. How long had they been fighting? It felt like years. It was only hours. What's going on? Techno croaked. The apocalypse, Wilbur returned. Techno groaned as he fell back against the ground, burying his face in his arms. 5 minutes, he said. Let me have 5 goddamn minutes without having to deal with this. We don't have that much time, Father said. Wilbur raised his head to see his father touching down on the ground beside him, soundless as the night. His eyes scanned the broken city around him before settling on Techno and Wilbur's discarded weapons. And because Wilbur could never catch a fucking break, they were sitting leagues away on a slice of earth separated by a dozen crisscrossing lines of fissures. When do we ever have enough time? Techno's voice was muffled by the snow. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. Wilbur groaned in sympathy, even as he accepted Father's offered hand and got to his feet. He reached down and grabbed the back of Techno's tunic, hauling him up so that Techno leaned on him while he leaned on his father. The three of them, exhausted in all sense of the word, watched as Dream continued breaking and shattering everything that no longer fit whatever story he wanted to tell next. I'll get your weapons, Father said, and Wilbur expected him to fly away to retrieve them, but instead, he simply snapped his fingers, and Wilbur's sword and bow, and Techno's trident and chain whip clattered at their feet. Wilbur glanced with shock at his father. When did you learn that nifty little trick? Must have picked it up somewhere, Father muttered as Techno wordlessly rearmed himself. Wilbur bent to retrieve his bow and rapier, surprised to find that his quiver was filled once more with new arrows, with gleaming obsidian feathers as fletching. These gods, Wilbur thought, will never understand their silly games. This is it, then, Techno said as he spun his trident idly between his fingers. This ends here. Everything ends here. How do we do this? Wilbur asked. The last time we think we got him cornered, he just shoved us into some other realm and went on his merry way. I won't give him the chance this time, Father said sternly. Sweat was beading on Techno's forehead despite the cold, but his words were steady when he said, We'll be your support, Phil. Now go. Not yet, Father said, turning to Wilbur. He lifted his cloak and reached into its inner pocket, pulling out a silver necklace. He pressed it into Wilbur's palm and leaned in to whisper into Wilbur's ear. Find what is sacred to you, and never let go. If you would take any advice from me, old man, let it be that. Why does it feel like you're saying goodbye? Wilbur whispered back, curling his fingers around the necklace. Father stepped back with a small, sad smile. I'm not, he said. It's just in case. Just in case? Wilbur demanded. In case of what? Another one-shouldered shrug. Worst case scenario. Wilbur placed the necklace into his pocket. Sure, he said. Let's lie to ourselves. It should be easy. We've been doing it for years, haven't we? Father blinked and looked as if he were about to say something else. But then the earth trembled again. A harsh laugh cut through the cold air. The three of them turned to see that the green god had finally caught sight of them. He stood at the edge of the bell tower, balanced on the balls of his feet as if the dizzying height was of no consequence to him. Even from so far below, Wilbur could see the jagged line of his smile carved into his face. Hello, he called out. Didn't expect you back so soon, I admit. He spread his arms to take in the chaos all around them. But I guess destruction is more fun when there are witnesses. Wilbur closed his hand around the hilt of his rapier. Despite the ache in his soul, he was ready. With Techno on one side and his father on the other, there was little else he needed. The northern winds whistled past them, and if Wilbur listened carefully, he could almost hear the song they were trying to sing. There were no words left to be said. They had done this 1,000 times before. Okay, I think there's little like breaks in the chapters. I think at the next break I'm going to call. I mean, okay. It actually it depends on how long it is. Okay, maybe 2 then. 2 of the little breaks, and then I'll call it for the day. Hold on, wait. I'm trying to find like the second break without. Okay. I think that's good. Oh, I found the last phrase in one of the little before one of the little breaks. And I'm scared to know the context of it. I'm not gonna say it, but Phil is defo gonna die. Probably. They took off. Phil to the skies and Techno and Wilbur rushing across the ruined ground. Phil would get to the tower first, but the other two would not be far behind. They leapt over chasm after chasm, skidding on snow and falling to their knees, but still moving forwards, heading towards the church. Every jump rattled Techno's bones and made him want to cry out, but he pushed it all down. The world was being torn apart by an all-powerful, bored little shit. Techno had no right to complain about something as inconsequential as a potentially sprained ankle. And then, suddenly, it wasn't inconsequential. It was an easy jump. He could have made it. Should have made it. But instead, he came up short. An inch shy of safety. Technoblade fell quietly. There was a sharp tug, and his shoulder almost popped out of its socket as his plunge was abruptly halted. He looked up, legs dangling in open air, and found Wilbur leaning over the edge with his hands around Techno's wrist. His only lifeline. Gods, Wilbur cursed, struggling with Techno's weight. Pull yourself up, Techno! Techno's boots scrambled for purchase against the chasm's face. He could feel Wilbur's hands slipping, but Techno knew Wilbur would more readily let both of them fall than let go. That was how Techno knew he'd already found family again. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, His left foot found a steady spot to carry most of his weight, with some awkward maneuvering. Techno managed to haul himself over the edge, breathing heavily with his hands on his knees, but on solid ground once more. "What the hell?" Wilbur demanded. "You and your grand speeches about never losing me again, but did you ever stop and ask if I could afford to lose you? Get a fucking grip!" Techno pushed hair out of his eyes and blinked slowly at the furious king. "Okay," Techno said quietly. "I'm sorry." "Are you all right then?" Wilbur asked, anger quickly evaporating into concern. "We have to go help Father." "I don't think he needs our help," Techno thought, squinting up at the bell tower. From this angle, he couldn't see much, but he could hear it all. The clash of steel on steel and the distant thuds of two godly beings absolutely trying their best to kill each other. "I'm all right," assured Techno. And even if Wilbur didn't seem to believe him, they had no other choice but to soldier on. They were off again, leaping from one broken chunk of earth to another, albeit a bit more cautiously, constantly looking over their shoulders to make sure the other had made it safely. When they finally made it to the foot of the bell tower, the pain in Techno's ankle had reached a boiling point, and only intensified when Wilbur pushed the tower door open, and they were met with a staircase spiraling into the sky. "I hate this," Techno declared. "I hate every aspect of this, and I would like to quit and be a humble farmer far from here." Wilbur stared at him, giving him 2 seconds to follow through on his words. "Are you done?" Wilbur said, "because in case you haven't noticed, the end of all things is currently being orchestrated right above our heads." "I regret ever meeting you." Wilbur snorted as he started up the stairs. "You say that as if it isn't your dry humor that rubbed off on me." They took the steps 2 at a time, round and round until Techno couldn't remember life before the climb. It wasn't until they were halfway there when Techno's knees finally gave up and he slumped against the brick wall, panting and biting back a scream of frustration. He was holding them back. It was the most important battle of his damned life, and he was holding them back. Wilbur, standing a few steps up from Techno, looked back with furrowed brows. "What's wrong?" he asked. You look pale. This isn't like you." He took the sweat dripping down Techno's face, the exhaustion evident in his trembling shoulders and liquid limbs. "Techno?" "You're right," Techno murmured, too tired to care about what he was saying. "I'm not myself. I'm not even a fraction of what I used to be. I hate this fragile body and all its whining and all its petty demands." He looked up, met Wilbur's eyes, willing him to understand, because there was no way in hell he could ever speak the words himself. He didn't have the vocabulary for it. "I hate being this weak, Wilbur." Wilbur's mouth fell open in a silent "oh" as realization finally hit him. Before, all this would have been effortless. The leaping, the running, the climbing. Something as small as a sprained ankle or a healing stab wound would have been no hindrance at all. Just little details to shake off like bothersome bugs. But that was before. This was now. "Techno," Wilbur whispered. "You're mortal?" That was the line that I read while searching for breaks, and I was like, oh boy. Okay. It had been written in an ancient script, in a book that looked exactly like all the others in the Forgotten Library, heavy bound and dust-covered. Philza had flipped gingerly through it, afraid that one wrong move could turn the fragile paper into ash, and had found the words on the last pages. "You seek power, reader," it had said, But all things come with a price. Power for power, divinity for divinity. Weebin knew he was mortal, though. Techno hasn't always been mortal. It didn't really occur to me that that's what Filza was probably talking to him about before they went through the void. Let's see. You seek power, reader, it had said, but all things come with a price. Power for power, divinity for divinity. If you wish to be a god among gods, one must be the vessel, the other the sacrifice. Oh yeah, that's right. He was gonna give up his immortality. I forgot about that. Filza had promised it would be their last resort. Only until push came to shove, Techno had said. And the green god had definitely shoved. Yeah, but during the campfire scene they talked about Techno becoming more... Yeah. And so Filza had pulled Techno back, and the two of them had talked, one god to another, for the last time. They had both known it was time, just as they had known that first day on that battlefield of ice and snow, arrows flying overhead and both of them lit from within by divine fire, that their roads had crossed, and there was no going back. Technoblade, blood god and emperor, had offered his scarred hand to Filza, angel of death and god of freedom, and they had clasped each other's fingers like old friends did after a long separation. For a moment, there was only the two of them in that forest of dreams, and when Filza whispered the ancient words, it almost sounded like a solemn prayer, a prayer to the god Filza was becoming. Towards the end, Techno's hand had betrayed his pain. It shook just a bit as his veins burned gold, turning him into gilded patchwork, half mortal, half god, his very soul caught in the crossfire between mortality and divinity. His breaths became quick and labored, and still Filza murmured, slipping silent apologies between the primordial spell. When the final word was said, Techno had fallen to his knees before Filza, a wicked reversal of fortunes. But he did not let go. Technoblade forsook his godhood without protest. There was barely a struggle, barely a scream of agony. It had been his sacrifice to make, and he would be damned if he let himself regret it. He had wrestled with martyrdom and won. When Techno stood again, he was human, simple and breakable, with numbered years and numb hands. Inside him, there was a hollow pit where his godhood used to rest. He was going to make a landfill out of it. And Filza was awake. Now he stood in a bell tower overlooking a ruined city. Fires raged until the horizon, burning away homes and streets that once teemed with easy life. Families and friends gathered in bunches like sweet-smelling bouquets. But like flowers unaware of the gardener's plucking hands, they had existed in the shadow of a being too large to comprehend. Their lives already decided for them. All their tragedies and loves, their hopes and their secrets, laid into predetermined places on the green god's mosaic. But that would end today. Because Filza was his antithesis, and he was going to set everybody free. The bell tolled as he and Dream continued their deadly dance around the tower, swords meeting and then unmeeting. Dream must have sensed the change. He must have seen it in the way Filza moved, taking each step with utmost confidence that the ground would meet him and not the other way around. He must have felt in the renewed strength behind Filza's blows. He must have known Filza was still holding back. For the first time since their encounter, the green god had the wits to finally be unnerved. One mistake was all it took. A misstep in their eons-old waltz. The green god swung too early, his sword cutting through air as Philza simply ducked out of the way. The bell shuddered as Dream's blade bit into the bronze and stuck there. As Dream tried to pull it free, Philza kicked at his knees and sent him spinning against one of the pillars holding up the tower's roof, unarmed. Philza stumbled against the pillar, nearly toppling over the edge of the tower, and before he could regain his balance, Philza swung at him. Dream managed to duck just in time, but Philza's sword cut through the pillar behind him as easily as a hot knife through butter. The pillar buckled and fell apart, and the roof of the tower began leaning, almost halfway to caving in on itself. The green god whistled as he jumped back from Wilza's advance. Did I say Wilza? I meant Philza. Philza's advance. Listen, Philza. I'm done listening to you. Philza swung again, this time managing to nick Dream's forearm. Brilliant red blood ran from the cut. It did not heal. Dream looked down at his wounded arm, his brows furrowed with confusion. Why did that hurt? He asked no one in particular. He raised his eyes to Phil, and his confusion turned to fury. What have you done? The very thing you tried to keep me from doing, said Philza, raising his sword above his head. Now, hold still, Dream. Let me take everything away from you as you took everything from me. The green god made to raise his hand, perhaps to conjure himself a new sword or attempt to throw Philza into another dream. Philza's hand shot out, gripping Dream's wrist and twisting. He leaned in to watch the other god's discomfort turn to pain, turn to panic, as he struggled to free himself from Philza's crushing hold. Little spider, Philza whispered, caught in your own web. You think this phases me? Dream demanded, still trying to pull his wrist away. Do you think I'm afraid of you? The angel of death looked at the green god with the eyes of a son taken too soon. Yes, he said, I think you are. Dream snarled, an animal cornered. You forget you've tried this before. You've always failed. Always. Ah, but that was before I came to realize what you were. Philza made sure Dream could see every inch of his expression, every depleted line, every mark the long years had etched into his skin. You would have us think that you're doing all this, the rewrites, this infinite loop, just for the fun of it. But you don't really have the luxury of indulging yourself, do you? Because you're afraid. Every second of every day of every life, you are afraid. You have known me since you were made. You have known since your first breath that I was the only creature capable of breaking you. And before I could even try, before you gave me any reason to, you ran. You pretended it was all some silly little game to keep your heart from exploding out of your chest with fear. And you ran. You sculpted words and worlds, rewrote histories, just to keep me from seeing you squirm. Because you're a coward. That's what you are, Dream. You're a goddamn coward. Take that back, the green god whispered. Take that back right now. Make me, challenged Philza. Oh wait, you can't. They were equal forces once upon a time. The spider and the songbird, control and freedom, the two oldest powers in the universe, the first of the gods, maintaining a delicate balance until one tipped the scale. Philza was merely tipping it back. You bought yourself some time, said Philza, eons of it, but the clock is ticking, and there's nowhere else to run. This game is over. Dream was breathing heavily, his emerald eyes wide. You can hurt me, he said, but you can't kill me. You can't. That's not how we do this. We'll always be hunting each other. You have the upper hand now, but not forever. You're right. Philza loosened his hold on Dream, allowing him to step away. The green god gave him a look of mistrustful confusion as he rubbed his wrist where Philza's hand had left scorch marks. I can't kill you. If I did, you'll simply be reborn, and the chase will continue. I know that now, and I also know what I have to do. He glanced over Dream's shoulder, and the other god turned on his heel to follow Philza's line of sight. When he finally saw what Philza meant, he whirled around with an incredulous, almost fearful expression. You can't be serious, Dream said, his voice trembling. You can't be. Then, regaining a bit of confidence, he said, No, you really can't be, because I'd just break out. I can carve my way out, little by little. Not if I have someone watching you, Philza said simply. What little hope the green god still had died in his eyes. You're an idiot, he declared, with equal parts disbelief and alarm. He moved towards Philza, grabbing fistfuls of his tunic and shaking him. It would be the closest to begging he would stoop to. Do you have any idea what I would lose? What you would lose? All things come with a price, Philza said, surprised by the sudden burn of tears in his eyes. And I pay it, so they don't have to. I'm done running away from my problems. I'm done begging the stars for answers. I've brought the stars low, Dream, and they will do my bidding for me. Why does it feel like you're saying goodbye? Wilbur had asked. Because he was. He'd said his farewells, even if he was the only one who would truly know it. He'd pressed one last gift into his son's hands, but his eyes had been on Techno as he'd spoken of never letting go. So Techno might understand, in hindsight, 10 days or 10 years from now, that Philza was leaving Wilbur to him, and him to Wilbur. Phil and Dream eternal slumber party. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Behind the green god, far below in the middle of the broken earth, was a cut in the universe, a jagged gate to a place of unmaking. It stood waiting for a green-eyed god and his keeper, a prison of infinite void for the two loneliest gods on earth. Philza grabbed Dream's wrist once more, manacles of flesh and blood. Or is it manacles? I don't know. It's been you and me since the beginning, Dream, Philza said solemnly, and it'll be me and you in the end. Father? Philza froze. What are you doing? Okay, wow, that is a cliffhanger if I've ever seen one. Jesus. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Alright. I want to know what happens next, but my phone's almost dead. I mean, it's at 31%, but I would like to charge it soon. And my throat is killing me. Don't do this, no. Hey, at least it gives you an incentive to watch the next stream. Because I know for a fact that if I keep on reading, I won't be able to stop. That's the problem with me. Is that with cliffhangers, like the intense cliffhangers like this, if I keep reading, I just won't stop until I'm done. And that is like another 2 hours, and I don't want to, well, maybe not 2 hours, but I don't want to do that. Oh, gee, wow. I don't know if you heard that, but it was fresh. Alright. Alright, I'm gonna end it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me just pull up the ending stream thing. It might take a few moments, but when it pops up, I'm just gonna promote my shit for a moment. Okay, thank you guys for watching. If you see at the top, I have my Instagram, my Twitter, and my YouTube channel. So, okay, here, the thing about my YouTube channel is I might actually be able to soon purchase the pro account, like a pro account for the editing software that I use. So I may be able to take the watermark off of my video that I edited and be able to put that up, and then that also means more content on my YouTube channel soon. So that's always good. How close are we to the end? We're about a little over 2/3 of the way through the chapter. I would say there's about 30% more. Pog, editing, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, also follow, I mean, I'm not really active on Instagram or Twitter that often. I'm gonna try to be. But yeah, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Gonna be posting content soon, hopefully. Now let's see who there is to raid. My goodness, Puffy's still alive? Yeah, let's raid Puffy. I haven't been watching her stream for the past couple of hours, but last I checked, she was blowing up Tommy's house and turning it into a smaller version of Letarge because Tommy destroyed Letarge. Oh wow, this is going a lot faster now. Alright. I hope you guys had a great time. I will see you in the next stream. I have no idea when it's going to be, but it's going to be finishing up reading PASSERINE, and then the series will finally be over. Alright. Bye-bye.